to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well with everybody. So we have another homeless clothes drive coming up, and unfortunately, it won't be until February. We're going to mark it on February 13th on that Saturday because I wanted to do one in January, but we are just so busy with doing other things that we're not going to be able to do one for the January. So we're going to mark it for February 13th. So if you guys have any clothes, socks, blankets, backpacks, you know the drill, please contact us at our Facebook at facebook.com/spirit communities and ask how to donate. And also there's a GoFundMe link on there as well. If you don't have any clothes or anything to donate, we always take money donations as well to help out the homeless any way we can. So all right, guys. Yeah, I had a great birthday weekend this past weekend. I spent it with my friends. I had a nice, quiet weekend, and it was just nice. It's one of those things where I think when you get a little older, you just don't, the party scene just isn't you anymore. And it was just nice. I took Nira out to the dog park as I always do on my birthday, and we just kind of just had a really nice time. So I want to thank all my friends for just hanging out with me during the day and just kind of spending time with me. And yeah, it was a magical birthday. So, all right, guys, as always, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, and Daily Motion. And any replays will always be on soulandspiritguide.com, and the other links will be in the description below. So, all right, guys, I am really excited about tonight's show because we have a very special guest. Dr. John Mcgrail is a renowned clinical hypnotherapist, self-improvement expert, and a sought-after spiritual teacher who is recognized as one of our country's leading media experts and public speakers on the subject of personal growth and successful life transformation. His company, A Better You, serves as a worldwide clientele, individuals of all ages and backgrounds, as well as select corporate clients. And he is the author of a seminal help book called The Synthesis Effect. Your direct path to personal power and transformation is helping thousands of readers empower their lives. Dr. Mcgrail teaches one simple perspective in life, and that's life is supposed to be fun. So please help me welcome Dr. John Mcgrail.
Oh, I didn't realize we were on. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm terrific. Glad to be here.
How's the weather in California?
The weather in California is winter-like for us. It's a little cold today, and about 50 degrees. And compared to the East Coast, where I'm originally from, the Northeast Coast, not Florida, it's balmy, but it's a little chilly for us. And yet the sun is shining, so no complaint.
I'm from Chicago originally, so I get that. I was in the New England area as well, and it's cold for us. When you get used to this warm weather, it's the moment it drops below 80 degrees, it's like, oh, where's the winter jacket?
Absolutely.
So John, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, as you mentioned in the description, I currently am a clinical hypnotherapist and personal empowerment expert, and I came to that a little bit later in life. I started as a military and then airline pilot, got into film and television for many years and media production, and then reached a crossroad in my life. I don't know how many of the listeners or our viewers remember the dot-com crash back in 2001.
Yes.
The company I was working for at the time as a senior VP of something was bought by a dot-com right before it all blew up. And the end of that was that I suddenly found myself, because the dot-com company went away, I suddenly found myself unemployed and had to figure out what I was going to do. And I realized with some reflection after I took some time off that the one thing I had loved about all the jobs I've ever had whether it was flying or production or producing training videos, was helping people coach, mentor, and help them improve the staff that I hired. That was always the most joyful part of my job. And that reflection and a lot of research led to my attending hypnotherapy college and getting certified as a hypnotherapist, which is where I started nearly 20 years ago. And then one thing led to another, and here I am today. But it was later in life that I actually found my true purpose, if you will. And I like to say I've not worked a day since.
Yes, isn't it amazing how when you actually love what you do, it's not no longer work. And one of the things I always tell people, when you wake up and you say, "Oh man, I got to go to work," it's time to leave that field because you're not enjoying it, and it's not healthy for our bodies or our souls to kind of like to live. We're not meant to work 9 to 5 and have no life, and a lot of people live that way.
Unfortunately, that's true, and I couldn't agree with you more. When you mentioned the fact that rule number one in my methodology is that life is supposed to be fun, that's a big part of it. When you wake up in the morning, you look forward to going to do whatever you do to make money. Most of us have to do something to bring money in because we are a money-based culture. But if you love what you do, it's a joy. You look forward to the day, and that's a big part of making your life fun. And I work with a lot of clients to help them find that purpose in that direction.
Fun is something, it's funny that when I think about that, because I enjoy to have fun, but I think people a lot of times we're trained in our society that life is supposed to go in a certain order. You're supposed to go to school, and then you're supposed to go to high school, and then college, and then get a job, and then get married, and do all these things. And you're constantly chasing that order. And I notice when I tell people do for you, like what is it that you do for you? People say, well, I don't have the time for that. I don't have fun. I don't go out and do stuff because I'm too busy working.
Right. It's interesting. It reminds me of, I think, my favorite quote of all time, which was coined by a guy named Christopher Morley, who was a somewhat of a peer of Mark Twain in the late 19th and mid 20th century. And he's quite an eccentric guy. If you look him up on Google, you'll see that he had some very zany quotes. But one that he coined that I love is this: there is only one success, and that is to be able to live your life in your own way. And unfortunately, so many of us, maybe most of us in our culture, learn to live our lives the way we are expected to, as you just
Yes.
described. And it does have a very deleterious effect on you. It is a disease, and it affects both your body, your mind, and your spirit. And so, yeah, when you learn to live your life your way and not worry about what other people think you should be doing, and you do what you love, then life gets to be very, very enjoyable. And that's what I mean by fun, not a series of hedonistic experiences, but an existence where you look forward to the day, you love your relationships, you love the choices you're making, and most of all, you've learned or relearned to relove yourself. And when that happens, you're off to the races.
You said something about expectations, and I know that expectations are put on us from right from the get-go. It is amazing how society and our parents and everybody condition us to have these expectations to do something in life, and we get lost in who we are, and that creates the unhappiness in us. And I know when I was growing up, and I had very wonderful parents, but at the same time, I was being groomed to take over the family business, and that was an expectation of mine. And I was young, and I was put into work on all my summer breaks and holiday breaks, and I started becoming this person that kind of became detached from themselves, and my grades started to drop, and I started because I was just like, well, I felt like I had my life planned out and I had no choice in the matter, and it kind of took away from who I was. And when people asked me, well, who are you, I couldn't answer them because all I knew is what I was being groomed for.
Right, exactly. And that unfortunately is sort of the ethos in modern Western culture, and particularly our culture. And I too discovered that once I decided to live my life my way and not worry about what anybody else thought or what anybody else wanted or what I should be doing, that's when my life changed drastically. And I had to get some help to make that happen. Most people do. And that also led to what I do today because I provide that help. Most of us that want to make these changes, we know we don't feel good. There's something wrong. We're blocked in some way, and we want to make the change. New Year's resolution is a perfect example. And so we say, yep, this is going to be great for me. And the conscious part of our mind, that logical cognitive part says, yeah, good idea. Let's do this. And then willpower, which is a conscious function, says, yep, I'll handle this. Willpower, we'll just make it happen. Unfortunately, human beings, we all are hardwired. It's in our DNA to resist these kinds of changes.
Yes.
It's called homeostasis. We will cling to the familiar with tenacity. And so we get into these patterns that just grind us down over time. But when you decide to make the change and then get the help you need, and again, I got to say this, most of us need it. When
Yes.
you get it, it's unbelievable. And I'm sure that there was someone or something that helped you make that switch yourself. I know for me it was, and it happened to be a brilliant hypnotherapist, which was part of what led me to this profession.
Well, the funny thing is in my life, it was the traumatic experience that shifted me. It was one of those things that jolted me in a way, and that I was just like, you know what? I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice either to live my life for me or to live my life for somebody else and do what somebody else expects. And that was a hard thing because when I went to my family, and I see this a lot in people, it's like, well, I don't want to disappoint my mom or dad. I don't want to disappoint my wife or husband. And it's uncertain because hey, we're going to make this big change, and what am I supposed to expect? What am I supposed to do? I don't know, and it's scary for a lot of people to make that change. And you're right, the body does want homeostasis, but at the same time, it's our ego and our fear that says, well, you know what, I want to do this, but you know what, you're safe here, you're really safe right now, and do we really want to make that jump because it could crash and blow up on us, and then where are we?
Exactly. And that's exactly what holds us in this prison, if you will. And to escape it and find that freedom, as you well know, is probably the greatest gift we can give ourselves.
Absolutely. But you have to make that choice, right? It's all about making that choice of determining, because in my belief, I believe we have to put ourselves first, not in like an egocentric way, but sometimes you have to be a little selfish and say, you know what, this is my life. And yes, there are other people that are affected by my life, but at the same time, this is my life and I have to do what makes me happy. Otherwise, I always tell a lot of people who want to heal and go out and help people and become therapists, you can't help people if you're not together, if you haven't resolved your past trauma and made peace with who you are.
Absolutely. There's an old saying that, well, I say this all the time. When you become a therapist, you find that your clients walk in day after day after day, and it's you walking in day after day after day. You see yourself in that. And if you don't walk the walk and talk the talk, to mention a obvious cliche, then you become a fraud. And so not only, I say this all the time, my clients are my therapists now. Not I have someone I see when I need a tune up, but if I'm going to profess all this empowered living and I'm not doing it myself, then it's a sham, and that doesn't do anybody any good. But I absolutely agree with you that once you decide to make the change and live your way, whatever that is, if it's true to you, and this is one of the things that I try to practice and teach, everything we do, think, say, and feel is the result of a choice. Most of
Yes.
those choices happen subconsciously. We're not aware of them, but we are choosing how we go through a moment at a time, a day at a time, our lives. And if you commit to making choices, thoughts, words, and deeds that serve your growth, make yourself first, which just means you're treating yourself really well, your well being, and the greater good, then it's not selfishness, but as you said, it's
Yes.
self-fullness. And one of the things that I teach every single person I work with is to treat themselves as if they were, or make themselves the most important person on the planet for my well being, my growth, and the greater good. And that keeps things ecological.
Well, what do you say to people say, well, I want to put myself first, but even though you tell them that it's not selfish to put yourself first, to take care of your needs, what do you say to people that are going to be like, well, I feel bad when I put myself first. I feel bad for, because I'm so used to giving and over giving. What do you say to those type of people?
Well, it's a process, and that is the basis of therapy. Where did you learn that, first of all? Because nobody comes into life self-deprecating and self-denigrating and not thinking that we all are born with absolute abundant self-esteem and unconditional love for ourselves, and we learn usually through the actions of well-intentioned but very misinformed people to start getting down on ourselves, to think less of ourselves, to put others first. And when I say don't put others first, I don't mean don't be of service, but if you put others first at your expense, then you are actually depriving them of the joy of creating the life they want to live and enabling, which doesn't work. So the bottom line is it's a process. Where did this feeling, where did this belief come from? And once we peel that onion back, then we go about sort of re-educating them or their spirit to adjust so that it's in balance. So you put yourself first, make yourself the very best you can be. That then allows you to be the very best of you for others.
You know, our childhood is the foundation for everything we are in our adulthood. And
Absolutely.
that's what creates our insecurities because in our childhood, we're at the most fundamental of our basic needs. We're, you know, we're very emotional. We don't haven't been taught how to judge things. And so when we don't get those fundamental hugs or we're not popular or something happens, if a friend steals from us, we start to build those insecurities. And I always tell people, you know, yes, therapy is wonderful. Hey, I help people a lot too, but I still go see a therapist because, hey, I need somebody to talk to too. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's very healthy because sometimes it just clears the mind. But you have to go back to the childhood. You have to go back to that child inside you and start to pick apart and say, okay, where did this start to develop? Because that root is creating that effect or that butterfly effect throughout your life. And until you take care of it, but it's scary for a lot of people to want to go back to the childhood because, especially for me, I had a lot of trauma. And when you have physical trauma and abusive trauma, it's very hard a lot of times for people to want to go there because that means reliving that.
Right. And there are ways to go back there and not relive. And you're absolutely correct. We are formed mostly in the first 4 years of life, but definitely
Yes.
by the age of 8, we are pretty much wired for the adults we're going to be. And the truth of the matter is, most people, when they have kids, are not really very well trained to have kids or be parents. And
Yes.
so, while all parents make mistakes, some parents make egregious mistakes. We are the product of all those early years. And one of the things that I found is that there were two things. Realize that in those early days, you were in fact a victim, if you will, because you had no choice and you had these uber people in your life. And if you're now an adult, it's time to realize that you don't have to continue to live those patterns. You can take responsibility. In fact, one of the key aspects for successful transformation is to take responsibility and recognize that we create our own reality. It doesn't feel that way. It feels often that life is happening to us, but
Yes.
we are creating our reality. So once a person takes responsibility for their outcomes and realizes that even though they may have had a really rough go of it as a child, they don't have to continue to live under those values or those beliefs, those usually limiting beliefs. And they can change all that. It happened, it's done, you can't redo it, but you don't have to blame your parents for the rest of your life for your problems, and you can take responsibility for how your life goes. And that's the beginning of that whole process.
I think that's the hardest part is taking responsibility, saying that it's my responsibility because it really is our responsibility how we react to something. Because someone can come up and slap us in the face or do something to us, but it's again our responsibility how we're going to react to that situation. If we give in to our emotional distress, if we give in to our emotional needs and our anger, and then all of a sudden we're going to create more chaos, and that leads us back into the path that we are, and we're unable to break our patterns because the brain, you know, the brain loves patterns. It's going to fire the same way it knows because that's the way the brain works. And so in order for us to start looking at that, it's hard to it's and I know this with my clients as well. It's hard. The first thing I say is we have to understand that we are the victim because whenever we're angry at somebody, like a terrible relationship, something happened to us, and all of a sudden you're like, oh well, this person treated me bad and this thing was that. Well, no, well, you need to take responsibility because you chose to stay with that person, you chose to allow that to happen, and that's hard for a lot of people.
It really is, and you're right. I like to think of the brain as the processor for the mind, but the mind, the subconscious part of the mind, especially, which is what governs most of our patterns, behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, values, is very much like a computer, at least metaphorically. And it never gets past about the age of 3 in its level of sophistication. So it doesn't know the difference between good or bad or happy or sad. That's all a conscious process, and that's all learned. but it will repeat its patterns, its programs, if you will, over and over and over again. And one of the big parts of my process is teaching people or helping them relearn how to respond in a way that's powerful for them rather than react the way they've been programmed to. That's a big part of hypnotherapy and my synthesis process is reprogramming that subconscious computer, reteaching that little 3-year-old child within us. And we all have that little, that's just the nature of the subconscious mind. It's very, very childlike and innocent. And it will believe whatever you tell it. You can teach it 2 + 2 is 5. I'm not worthy. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not good enough. Or you can teach it 2 + 2 is 4. I can accomplish anything I want in my life. And that all happens, as you said, and I agree, early on. And it's really not that scary. If you do it well, you don't, there are tools and techniques that we can use so that you don't have to relive it, but you can learn from it and transcend it.
Very well said, Dr. John Mcgrail. All right, guys, we're going to take a commercial break and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, and we are back. If you're just joining us, we have Dr. John Mcgrail, who we are talking about. And Dr. Mcgrail, I want to ask you about your book and your work, The Synthesis Effect. What is the synthesis effect?
Well, the synthesis effect is learning how to live your life virtually free of suffering. That is the end goal of the process that I call synthesis. So the effect is transcending all these limiting beliefs and everything that's holding you back in life, living your life your own way, and learning to live your life virtually free of suffering. And it's doable. It's practical. I call it practical enlightenment. That's the effect. The process is pretty simple. It is the combination of modern science, some of the discoveries we're making about human behavior and the mind and how it works, and we combine it with some ancient techniques that have been in use as long as civilization, hypnosis, meditation, and some other shamanic, if you will, what might be called primitive or indigenous techniques and traditions. We bring that all together to synthesize or create a better you, which is the name of my company.
Oh, very interesting. So, a lot of people sit there and you hear modern science and ancient techniques, and then you hear things like meditation and hypnotherapy. There's a lot of people that are going to push back. They're going to think, oh, well, that's new agey and that's woo woo. And right away, because that's something that we have to battle because we're in a Western society that pills and drugs and surgery for everything. How do you start to how do you start to grow to your clients that are sitting there saying, well, it sounds great, but, it's this meditation, hypnotherapy, is that really going to help me?
Well, again, it's a process, but I always start, and one of the things that I think makes this process so effective. Well, first of all, I tell all my clients and my students, workshop students, my corporate clients, I am a classically trained scientist. I was a biology and psychology major as an undergraduate, and I grew up with that Western scientific sort of ethos. I'll believe it when I see it. Now, along the way, I began to study some of these primitive or ancient or what you called woo-woo, which many people think techniques. And what you find is that there's really nothing woo-woo about it at all. The truth of the matter is our mind is responsible for our reality. Everything that happens to us in life is processed through our mind. The mind controls the body, and the mind, depending on how it's trained, creates our reality. So I devised some very simple, logical, Western-based models to show my clients and my students exactly how their reality occurs and what's required for change. And we talk about some of the latest discoveries in science, quantum field theory, quantum wave theory, epigenetics, some of these cutting edge scientific fields that are now bringing the woo woo back into our culture. We separated ourselves from the concepts of pure energy and spirit many, many, many years ago when modern Western science and philosophy was developed. It's all developed around mechanics, and it's all developed around empiricism. I'll believe it when I see it. And actually, that was a very good thing because it helped us create some incredible technologies. But what happened when that happened and we started thinking empirically is that we forgot about this concept called spirit and spirituality. And what we now know, and we have the science behind it, is that this energy, this essence, the essence of all existence, which I call spirit, for lack of a better term, we have the science. We've proven that it exists. And so the beauty of what's happening now in Western culture is that we are slowly, but ever more bringing it all back together. So it's not just treat the symptoms with pills and surgery, it's treat the symptoms and relieve the pain, but look at the cause. What is the energetic cause behind this? Because everything is simply about energy. So the whole process of synthesis was to develop models and techniques to help Western thinkers, like am, understand what's really going on. And suddenly it's not woo-woo. This is the basis of reality.
Well, I think that is, there's when I'm in Eastern medicine, that's where all my degrees in acupuncture or into medicine. And I originally wanted to become a doctor of Western medicine until I sat in a few classes and I was pushed pharmaceuticals like Pfizer and everything. And I thought, well, hey, great, Western medicine is great for surgery, this and that, but there's got to be something deeper than this. I just don't want to take a pill because I watched my whole family die of diabetes and cancer, and they were taking pills. They lived miserably. They didn't work on themselves, try to resolve, and their anger just festered. And you just saw like how the disease of the mind and the mental and the emotional just took over the body. And I said, you know what? I was like, I don't ever want to be like that. I go, I don't care what I have to do. And I had to learn because I swayed to one side. And I think it's human nature for us just to go to one stream or the other. Like one side's right, one side's right. And I had to learn. And I think a lot of people out there have to do the same, where there's, the combination of Eastern and Western can be great if used together. It's when we start separating, as you say, when we think one side is the only way versus the other side, where we start to disconnect not only from helping ourselves, but from who we are.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I always look to are the indigenous cultures of the world. You could call it Eastern, you can call it indigenous, you can call it primitive. It doesn't really matter. But these techniques have been in use for thousands and thousands of years. And if something's been around for thousands of years, there's got to be a reason for it.
Yes.
And the reason is it works. And when I was doing research for my dissertation, one of the things that I did was study some of the indigenous cultures, particularly Native Americans, because they're right here and it's easy to access their philosophy, even get to some of their medicine people, their shamans, but also the Australian Aborigines, the tribes in Central America, South America. It doesn't really matter. These cultures, before exposure to Western philosophy, never suffered from some of these zany diseases that we have, these autoimmune deficiencies, lupus and Crohn's and IBS, and on and on and on it goes, none of which respond very well to Western medicine, by the way,
Yes.
because of the spiritual, energetic element behind it.
Yes.
But when these cultures are westernized, then they are rampant with the same diseases. And I started looking at that. What's the difference? Well, the difference is they have understood instinctively for thousands of years that we are simply part of a bigger system, an energetic system, if you want. And if you invest your energy wisely, if you balance your energy physically, emotionally, and spiritually, you can thrive. And so they're not all about do, acquire, lack, there's not enough, I'm not enough. They are about living in balance, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That's what their cultures are based on. And what you find is for those cultures that still live that way, there aren't too many left, they thrive, and they've been thriving for a very long time, and they don't want any part of our philosophy. So there's something behind that. And when we bring them together, as you said, it can't be one way or the other. But when you blend it and you do it correctly, you can create that marvelous physical, emotional, and spiritual balance. I teach my clients, and this isn't really the way it is, but it's easy to understand that we have three energy streams: the physical stream, which is our body, our vessel, our vehicle; the emotional stream, which is our identity, the ego, the logical, cognitive 3-year-old; and then the spiritual, which is a lot harder to understand, but is the essence of all existence.
Yes.
Balance those three energy streams, and it's not hard to do if with a little practice. Suddenly you are thriving, you are healthy, you're strong, you're vibrant, you're creating abundance. It's not about lack anymore. And that's the whole process, or reason behind the synthesis process, is to create that as easily as possible.
Well, I think that sounds wonderful, to be honest with you, because it is a whole. I think you're right that we underestimate, especially here in Western culture, that we always think that, it's just the body, that there's no emotional, that there's no mental. And I watched my family do it. I watched my family be angry, and I took on some of that anger because of my life and the things that happened. And I actually worked myself into a position where my heart ended up having issues because I ended up partying a little bit too much, but I was so angry about my past and so hurt that it just festered until one day I was doing a football tournament and I just dropped. And I was like, and the doctors were like, well, you're probably going to have surgery. And I'm not a believer in surgery unless it's a must. And I was like, no, no, there's something beyond this. And I looked at myself. I was like, you know what? It's time to get back to who I was, because for a while I pushed myself away because I just needed a break from the work that I do and everything, but I didn't resolve things. And I said, you know what, you know better than this. You teach people, but and look at what you got yourself into because you didn't take your own advice. And then all of a sudden, so I started looking. I said, okay, let's deal with all this. And I dealt with it. It was painful, it was harsh, but I let it out. And as much as, even if it came up every second of every day, I think one period I cried for like a whole month straight, nonstop, tears flowing down like the river. But I allowed it out of love. And I was like, you know what, I have to be able to love myself enough, because I was never in Chicago. We're tough. We're taught not to show our feelings, and it was tough for me to get past that barrier, because as you said, we're not a healthy society. I think the healthiest country right now, or at least last time I checked, was Hong Kong. And they're one of the healthiest societies. They take breaks in the middle. A lot of your Eastern, China, Japan, they take an hour or two break in between work. Their work hours shorter. And I try to do that now. I make sure I get up at I get rest, I do my work, but then I take a break, and I make sure I take more care of myself. But this 9 to 5 job, or this 24, I have a friend that works all the time, even sometimes from 10 o'clock in the morning to 11, 12 at night, and then she gets a few hours rest and goes back at, and I see the difference that's happening. And I think that your method is actually wonderful if it combines everything. It sounds very well put together.
Well, thank you for saying that. And it's interesting because, as I say in probably the first paragraph or two of the book, if anybody picks it up and reads it, they'll see the first 6 words: life is supposed to be fun. That's rule number one. But one of the things I say in the introduction pretty early on is that there's really nothing new in my book. I don't think there's anything new in any of these self-help books or any of these, because this stuff is thousands of years old. It's the essence of humanity. I think I got lucky or was divinely guided. I don't know which it is, probably a little of both, because when I look at some of the stuff I came up with, I don't think I'm smart enough to do that, but I did. So, but I think it's the perspective and the way it's presented that has really made it such a success, and that makes the process so effective. But everything you're saying is absolutely correct. Once you take that, you take the responsibility for where you are, and you say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not happy. I don't like who I am or the way I'm living. I don't like the way my health is degraded. And once you take the ball and start running with it with the appropriate guidance, it's incredible, as you know, not only how much you can transform yourself, but how incredibly more enjoyable life is, which gets back to rule number one. Life is supposed to be fun. Our natural state of being is well-being. It's not dis-ease. And so you kind of have to re-educate your mind around that. But that's what this process is all about.
I think a lot of people are so concerned with trying to be perfect and put on this image
Oh,
of being strong and being the healer and being these things. And I think that's where we create the more chaos, because when we try to put on this image, no one is perfect. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, we all make mistakes, none of us know everything. It's impossible, and who would want to know everything? That would be so boring, right? And if you're like me, and it sounds like it, I love education. I have all these books back here plus then some, and I'm always on the computer, I'm always reading, I'm always looking. And that just lights my fire, and that makes me want to do this. And when I'm working with someone, or even on myself, I want to know more. I want to know, let's okay, we have this problem, we have the surface stuff, but I want to go deeper now. I want to see what else I could learn, even if it's the same subject of something that's happened to me 30 years ago. I want to see if I can find something deeper. And I think by going, as they say, down the rabbit hole, I think that allows us to gain that perspective that you have, because that's what it is. It's our limited, as you said earlier, our limited beliefs, but it's also our limited perspective. Because we have limited beliefs, we're almost like horses with the blinders on, where we can only see tunnel vision, and we don't see that there's a whole other world out there.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And at the same time, I found that some people, because of our initial training, if you will, think that it has to be this long, arduous, painful, suffering process, and it doesn't. It's a very, very simple process. And one of the things that I profess, one of the number one precepts of my whole process, is that this is very, very simple to do. Now, it can be hard or it can be easy, but either way, it's simple. So let's choose, please, to make it easy. And the people that I work with that choose to make it easy, they get it quickly most of the time and profoundly, and they're off to the races. And you're right. It's finding that right perspective, that little extra bit of knowledge. One of the things that I compare this to is a sport that I really love is golf. And whether you're a golfer or not, you've seen people swing a golf club. It's not
Yes.
really a particularly intricate, difficult thing. And at the same time, it's one of the most intricate and difficult athletic motions there is. So it's simple
Yes.
and complex at the same time. And it's all about feel. So what one person feels is different from what another person feels, even though it looks exactly the same. So when you find the right instruction, the right perspective, through a lot of research sometimes, suddenly what was so difficult becomes very, very easy. And that, again, is one of the fundamentals of my process. I try with all my heart and soul to make it not, well, it is a simple process, but to help my clients choose to make it easy. And when they do, it's amazing how fast the transformation occurs.
I gotta be honest with you. Golf for me, I'm a softball player, and I played softball and flag football and every sport, basketball, volleyball. And I remember the very first time I tried going golf, because one of my friends was a golfer for high school, and I was like, I don't know, I've never tried it. So we went out, and there was all this people. It was a Saturday, and I remember grabbing the club, and he was teaching me how to do it, and I pulled back, and when I swing like a softball. And I almost whacked someone in the head, and everyone started laughing. And I was like, all right, I'm done. I threw the club down. I walked away, because I was like, wow, that was a lot harder than I thought. I was like, how hard is it to hit that little ball? And it's a very hard technique. And it was embarrassing, but after a few minutes, I got back out there and I started doing it. And golf was just not for me. It was a lot harder than I thought. But again, I like what you're saying, because I think it's what we're, I think transformation is easy when you stop fighting it. And again, it goes back to the choice. But it's like, people used to ask me all the time, well, how long do I have to work with you? A year, 2 years, 3 years? And I'm like, why do you want to? I was like, hey, that's great for my bills, but why do you want to be with me for that long? You don't. And even as a massage therapist, I knew people that went to a lot of places, and they were like, I've been going to this doctor's office or this place for years, and I was like, no, you just need to get this done, blah 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 blah. And they were like, wow. And I never saw them again. And that's the whole point to it. You don't need to spend a lifetime in therapy. You don't need to spend a lifetime crying and getting over yours. If you continue continue to fight it, then that's what you're going to do. You're going to spend a lifetime of sadness and grief because you're fighting it, you're not accepting it. But when you have someone as educated and knowledgeable as you, or someone else that understands this, it should be a simple process if the person is willing.
Well, first of all, thank you for that very kind compliment, and I will accept it gracefully. Um, but I again, I totally agree. We fight it because we're taught to suck it up, and people cannot believe that most of my clients, for instance, are with me from about 3 to 5 weeks ish. That's sort of an average, and everybody gets it at a different pace. Some people take a little bit more because they've got more on their plate or whatever, but it can be a very quick process with the right assistance and the right tools. And of course, there are energies that we, if we want to change our lives, have to bring to the party. I have a home model that I call the formula or recipe for change. And one of the first things I talk about with all new clients is what is required. This is what you have to bring to the party if you really want to make this change that you're asking me to help you make. And we talk about that. And one of them is commitment. The commitment's got to be, I will do whatever it takes to get this done. Now, that sounds really onerous, but the truth of the matter is, as you know, what it takes isn't very much.
Yes.
But you have to do the work. It's not magic. And that's another thing that I find is that, one, we are a society of instant gratification. And with our smartphones, we have the world in our fingertips right here. You don't have to ever almost go to a library again. Everything you ever need is right here, and we want it now. And a lot of the times, people are coming in with a lifetime of stuff, and they expect, we say, well, it's going to be quick. They expect it to be magic. There's work involved, but as you're right, if you're willing to do the work, it doesn't have to take a long time. And as I said, most of my clients are with me from about 3 to 5 sessions.
I couldn't agree more. All right, everybody, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. If you're just joining us, we are in the last part of the show, and we are with Dr. John Mcgrail. And Dr. John, I've been having a great and wonderful conversation with you so far. And you mentioned a couple of things right before the break, and I think it's so important because we are a society of instant gratification. As you say, we are all on our iPhones, we all have them, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and all these different things. And we chase after sports because we want that instant win. We don't want to work for things nowadays. And I think what's awesome about what you do is that you say, well, this is what's required of you. If you want the help, if you want to actually make the strides for your change, then you have to have a commitment. And that doesn't mean, all in every single moment of every single second, but you have to be able to make that commitment to want to do the work.
Absolutely. We don't get into our dis-ease overnight. It takes years and years to get to, messed up and have our lives sort of where they are. And it doesn't instantly go away. It is a process. There is work involved. And, as I mentioned before the break, a lot of people are scared when they hear that word commitment and some of the other energies that I tell them they need to bring to the party. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't have to be hard. You have to be consistent. You have to be willing to go through the process. And if you're willing to go through the process, which part of which is committing to yourself, loving, honoring, and respecting yourself enough to take yourself through the process and treating yourself with that kindness, which most of us aren't very good at, then the process doesn't have to take an awful long time. It can happen very, very quickly. But it isn't instant. It's not magic. And anytime I get somebody that calls me or somehow gets into the office, well, I'm not seeing anybody in the office right now, but in normal times.
Yes.
Hopefully they will be back soon. Anytime I start working with somebody and I detect that they're looking for the magic wand, I actually have a magic wand in my desk and I bring it out and I say, okay, here's my magic wand. If I could tap you on the head and make this all go away, I would do it and I'd be a very wealthy man because I'd have a
Yes.
lot of money.
Yes.
That's not going to work. If it doesn't work, I'll let you know. But let's talk about the process. And if you're willing to commit to yourself and do the process, you're going to feel a lot better very, very quickly.
And that's what's funny is because I use that symbolism too, and I have a bunch of magic wands, crystals, and every, and especially with Harry Potter out now, everybody wants to have that magic, and it would be really nice to, and it's like when I was before I got hit by a car riding my bicycle, I used to be in shape, work out all the time, and I used to people would always be like, "Oh, Miss Raina, you're in such shape. I wish I could look like you." And I'm like, well, you can. I mean, it's not something that's gifted to me. I didn't, I when I had a chiseled body, it wasn't like I woke up one day and that was it. I worked out at it. In between my work, I would always take my day, and that 2 hour period that I would take off in the middle of the afternoon, I would go bike riding and go to the gym. And so I made time for myself, and I made it happen because of that idea. Because yes, because I had to honor myself, and I love that word because not too many people speak that word anymore. We don't have a lot of honor in this in society today, and that's one of the things that I even try to teach to my protege Caleb is that honor. I was like, you have to be honorable, not only by your word, but to yourself and to other people. If you want to help people, if you want to grow and change and get over things, then you have to honor everything that you're experiencing because it's that experiencing or that's the experience that has brought you to who you are. And how wonderful is that? So one of the things that I had on my mind was is that a lot of people are going to think that whatever technique is out there. Have you ever had anybody that it really doesn't work for, or have you ever had people that it just doesn't seem to click?
Oh, absolutely. And, I like to say that the vast majority of the people I work with do really well. And the truth of the matter is, the vast majority do very well. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been in business for 20 years. And at the same time, I totally agree with you. There are some people that for whatever reason this doesn't click with or for. And as I say in my lectures, my workshops, my seminars, in my book, and to my clients, there is no silver bullet. There is no one way that works for everybody. This works for a lot of people, and I found that one of the reasons I wrote the book was because it works so well. But there are some folks that either won't do the work or expect something else, or for whatever reason simply can't get out of their own way. And no, it's not. Fortunately, that's a minority, but there's no one solution for everybody.
Well, and I think that really makes the mark of someone who's really trying to help because there's a lot of people that'll boast out there that say, hey, my method helps everybody. I have 100% success rate. And I sit there and I think that's impossible. That is that is impossible because you're always going to run across the people that say they want help but don't want to help and that don't want to put in the work and that quit on you within a couple weeks and unfortunately we have to send those people love and compassion and hope that one day they find that they really want to do it, but at the same time you have to focus on the people that do, and that's a great I mean if you have even 70% success with your clients, I think that's fabulous because even in medicine, and we call it practicing medicine. Why? Because we're always learning new stuff. Even the same technique that could save thousands of people will also not save a lot of people as well. And I think people have to understand that just because you're trying something, that doesn't mean that that technique may work for you, but hey, it may. And that's the wonderful thing about it. And that's why I think that the world has so many people out there that can help because my technique may not be right for somebody and yours may, or vice versa. And I love having the connection that I could say, you know what? I don't feel that I can help you. So why don't I give you to Dr. Grail, or why don't I pass you on to this person and see if their technique can help you, because everybody is different.
Right. One of the things I learned a long time ago, and it was one of the most important lessons I learned early on in my practice, is that you can't take it personally.
Yes.
And I freely refer people out. I've got a great network of professionals of all ilks, and I freely refer people out when I think it's appropriate, or I think for whatever reason I can't provide what they need. And I've also found over the years that I learn as much from ones that don't do well as I do from the ones that do.
Yes.
I always, if someone's not thriving or isn't doing as well as I want them to, as you said before, I'm always looking for new possibilities, new insights, new inspirations. So I try my very, very best to expand my repertoire for those folks. But if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And I don't take it personally. I've given my best, but maybe this person can do better with you. So I'm very much about that. And as you said, I totally agree. I honor that as much as I honor the successes. One of the things that I learned early on from one of my teachers was if you don't take the failures too badly, don't take the successes too much, so you don't get big in your head. This is, we are. One of my Native American teachers said, "You are a hollow bone through which the healing flows. You are not the healer. You are just a vehicle. And if you ever take credit for the healing and think it's you that's doing it, you lose the power." And so I've always sort of kept that right here in my heart, and I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely. And I think that I hate the word failures because we don't fail. We don't. We just find different ways to do something. And those clients that I've had, even myself, that I've had to refer out, or I've said, you know what, this isn't working. And those have led me to some of my other breakthroughs to help people. And I think that's the important thing, because everything is a lesson. Even if you're helping someone, there are lessons in it for you as well, because that's how we expand. Our we're evolving right now. We're going through such a time period of evolutionary change that our soul, our spirit is growing, it's changing. There's a lot of transformation going on. And it would kind of be like believing things that we believed in 5,000 years ago. And great, at that time it worked, and some of the techniques may, but there's a lot of beliefs that we have education now that we understand. Well, hey, you can't smoke cigarettes and be pregnant and have a wonderful baby, or drink alcohol like we used to think. Oh yeah, smoke them up and it's fine. And I think that we have to be able to understand that, and I think it's very important. And that's why I wanted to really have you send that message out for people who are listening, because it's really important for them to understand that it's a process between both of you. It's not just this person, but it's a process between that, and it's with any therapist or anybody that you go see for help.
Absolutely. And when I have people that come to me to work on the fear of failure, one of the things we talk about is that Christopher Morley quote: "There is only one success,
Yes.
living your life your own way." Well, if there's only one success, then there can only be one failure,
Yeah.
which means everything else is simply learning. You make a choice, you get a result. If you like the result, you successfully learn something that works for you. Keep making that choice. If you don't like the result, you have successfully learned something that doesn't work for you. Stop
Yes.
making that choice. And as we go down this path, I kind of think of it as a funnel. You start at the wide end, and as you get better and better and better at making better choices, your life gets more and more powerful. And when you come out the skinny end, you're on your way. So there is no failure. There's just learning. And with each experience, we all learn, and that's the beauty and the joy of this work. I was afraid 20 years ago when I first started this that I would get bored. I have never been bored.
Yes.
Not one time. It's new every day, and that's one of the things that I love so much about it.
Well, I think that's what's amazing, is because every single person brings a different experience. And even if you have 100 people with a similar issue, there's 100 different experiences behind it. And that's why I kind of like Eastern medicine, because even when we're doing Eastern medicine, you could have 100 colds, but you treat it differently with different formulas, because it depends on if it's hot, cold, if it's flat, and so you have to think that way. And my sister is a social worker, and she helps a lot of kids that come up in broken homes and everything like that, and she does a fabulous job at it. And one of the things that she had to learn was to get out of the box of what they teach you, because
Yeah.
she would even call me up, and she would be like, Miss Reina, I have this child, and I tried this approach. I was like, Nick, I was like, you have to go outside the box. You have to be able to adjust to your clients or your pay or whatever they're your kids, and that you have to be able to adjust to that in order for that. And then all of a sudden you'll find it amazing, because every person brings you, it's just like a new experience all over again, even if you've heard the problem already.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better. And that's, as I said, that's the joy of the work. And as long as you're open and continuing to study, explore, and learn, and not take yourself too seriously, uh, then you can be of great assistance to so many people. But the one thing that is important for everybody to remember is that we all have within us whatever it is we need to create the life of our dreams. We're going to need some help, but it's in there. And people like you and I like to say that we provide that help, and for so many people, it's the help they need. But go get it.
Yes, absolutely. I like that. And have fun, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Dr. John, it was a wonderful pleasure to have you on the show, and I hope I can have you again sometime soon. And is there anything is there any information or anything that you'd like to give out to our guests that are listening to the show?
Well, yes, thank you. And let me first say that it's been a delight to be with you, and I would be happy to do another one. We just scratch the surface. We've got so much to talk about. But I can be reached, and if anybody has questions or would like to reach me through my websites, hypnotherapylosangeles.com, which is more hypnotherapy oriented, or drjohnmcgrail.com, my two websites. That's more about the synthesis process. I can be reached there. My phone numbers are there. My email is there. And I always provide a personal response, completely confidential, never any obligation to any inquiries. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I don't have my people do it. I do it myself, and I will give you the best guidance I can. So thank you for that opportunity.
Perfect. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. John, for joining us, and you've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
All right, everybody. If please check out our Facebook at facebook.com/transcendental transformation. Our YouTube is always the same at Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Sign up for our website and receive special VIP access to hidden shows and guest offers when we have guests like the wonderful Dr. John on our show. And always, if you have any questions, email me at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.